Good morning, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Baggers, joined this morning by a special guest, Kenny Ruddick. He is the sprints and hurdles coach for Sachem North Varsity track team. Kenny, thank you for joining me this morning. Excited to have you on the show. If you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about your background and how you ended up in the position you're in today.
Sure. Thank you for having me, by the way. So I have been a coach for over the past 6 years now, and I had originally, before that, I was an athlete. I ran at the college level. Ended up getting a coaching job right after that, and coached at the college level, and then transitioned over to the high school level, and been coaching ever since.
Talk to me a little bit about the transition from being an athlete to being a coach. How did that happen? Was it it just kind of fell into your lap, or is it something you wanted to do?
It kind of did fall in my lap, actually. So I had originally was planning to run at Stony Brook University, but my eligibility kind of ran out. And so obviously that was a little devastating to me. And around that same time, the assistant coach over at Suffolk had posted on Facebook that there was an opening at Suffolk. And I jokingly messaged her and said, oh, maybe I should apply for it. And she said, no, you really should. And ever since then, I went and applied. They wanted to bring me on. And then it was a wrap after that. But I would say the transition wasn't too difficult for me because I had coaches that had coached me in college were kind of mentoring me and making sure I was set up for success. And that helped me a lot. I also took it super seriously, especially at first. I studied a lot. I obviously had experience with doing workouts at the high school and college level. So I kind of knew what the workout should and shouldn't be. But I didn't really have a hard time transitioning as a coach.
One of the interesting challenges is for a lot of coaches who start out early on in their careers is they're a lot younger than the more mature coach, so to speak. And so the age gap between who you're working with and how old you are is quite small.
Mm-hmm.
What was that experience like for you? And how did you kind of separate yourself from being one of the group, so to speak, who may be a year or two older than people in the group? And hey, I'm a coach here. I can't be doing what you're doing.
Well, I mean, we had a really good team at the time, so the whole team took it very seriously. We knew that we had, big dreams of winning these national championships and whatnot. So, when I came in, we knew that we were getting to work. We set a lot of realistic goals, and when we got into the season, everyone was laser focused, and being that we had 4 coaches working on the staff, we were able to just keep everything focused, and I didn't really have a problem with gaining respect of the kids or anything like that. But I did make them run, and we worked really hard. So that kind of demanded their respect a little bit. I didn't really if you were coming in late, you were going to get an earful from me. So they knew that I was just as serious as they were.
Mm-hmm. You were at college, you were coaching college for a few years, and then you moved into the high school realm. What was the rationale for making that kind of decision? Because for a lot of coaches, they see high school, junior high as a stepping stool to college, whereas you kind of went the opposite direction. I'm wondering what the rationale was for that.
So I had hit a crossroads where it was either take my college coaching to that next level. There was a little bit of instability with that, as far as, maybe I would travel to a smaller D3 or D2 school. I may be moving around a little bit. So that it made it a really tough decision. It was either take that chance and risk the instability, or pursue a career in marketing, which is what my degree was in. And about that same time, I said, all right, let me pursue my marketing career. And the coach over at Stony Brook University, Coach Howard, had told me there's an opening at this high school. I think you'd be a great fit. He put me in touch with the head coach there. And I really loved what he was doing with this program. He had been coaching there for at least 30 years or so. So, the culture was great. I enjoyed the other coaches that I worked with, and it made the decision really easy at that point. And ever since the first year on. It was really enjoyable working with the kids at the high school level.
Mhm. We do have a question for you in the chat box, and it's from Xavier Vega, and it's kind of flipping that and says, what advice would you give to a high school coach that's wanting to make the jump into coaching at the collegiate level? What can you do to get that foot in?
For me, it was really about networking and who I knew. Every opportunity that I've ever been given was kind of by chance. Whether a coach had put something on Facebook and I reached out and took advantage of that, or the coach reaching out to me from Stony Brook and saying, "Hey, there's an opportunity." So I would say expanding your network, trying to meet, as many college coaches in your field as possible, making those connections, letting them know, what your goals are, and then it may just land at your foot. So that'd be my best advice for that.
Yeah, I would also say that you probably have to know what you're doing too, right?
Yes, that's important too.
You meet the right people, but you better know what you're doing when you meet them.
Mhm.
It, Talking a little bit about track, because a lot of the coaches that I have on the show, we get the typical football, basketball, and so on, and that's expected because there's so many programs in the U.S. Track, I don't get that many people on the show who are track coaches. Can you talk a little bit about how that your coaching world might be a little different to maybe a typical team sport?
So coaching track, I mean, you got to think that you have the team element where you have all these kids or all these athletes on one team, but there's so many different events. There's over 50 events on track and field. So that's kind of the best part about it, is that when you're combining all these events and trying to get the kids to, win individually, but also it helps better the team. So it has that aspect to it. The other thing about track and field is that it's an international sport. I mean, it's one of the big Olympic sports. Usain Bolt kind of came on the scene and electrified it, which brought a little bit more popularity to track and field. But I think the popularity and the viewership of track and field has risen since then. And I don't really see it declining. I still see it as an upside. So it'll gain popularity. It may not be that big money sport like football or basketball, but it's one of those sports that there's just so many different things going on at any given meet or invitational that it could be interesting for anyone of any kind of athlete type.
Do you recruit athletes to a track team with the argument that what you're doing for them can help them in other sports as well, where it's kind of a cross training?
Yeah. So a lot of football players run track in the spring to help them get with their speed. So I would say, in terms of like even at the high school level, we'll take any soccer player and we know that they're going to be doing pretty good at maybe the mid distance level or even a sprinter. Volleyball or basketball players, they may have really good jumping abilities. And so we might stick them in to some of the jumping events. Gymnasts tend to be pretty good at hurdles and pole vault. So you really get a mixed bag of multi-sport athletes that can come and join a track team and benefit, getting a little faster, getting more explosive. And then you see it kind of help them out in their other sports as well.
Does that create conflict with other coaches in other teams where I don't want them doing that I want them doing this during the off season, so they're better at my sport when, springtime or fall comes around?
I don't hear that often. I'm sure there are some coaches that would prefer their kids play soccer all year round and do the club teams and the travel teams like that. But from the perspective of the athlete, if something's going to make you a little bit better and give you an edge over your competition, say in soccer, I would be all for it. I mean, if it's going to help you become a faster sprinter and be a little bit quicker, when you're making your cuts and things like that, then, why not?
Now, can I ask, you said you ran. What did you run when you were an athlete?
I was a 400-meter hurdle specialist. I also ran the 4x4, and I played around in some other events, but my main event was the 400-meter hurdles.
So when you're coaching, I'm guessing you're going to have to coach a lot of athletes in different events. You talked about the 50 events. How do you do that based on the fact that a lot of the events you may not have ever competed in or trained in?
I mean, I definitely gained a lot of experience when I would coach decathletes, so or
Mhm.
the heptathletes. So they were doing 10 or 7 events.
Mhm.
So we would be running around. I would work closely with the throws coach and with the jumps coach, and obviously I would help with the sprints and hurdles and anything like that. They would help out with their respective events, and then for things like maybe the 800 or the distance events, we might all not have the experience in it, but we'll wing it and we'll try to figure it out. But yeah, a lot of running around, many different events. I can even go and help out with the jumps if I have to. So, I mean, track and field. If you're a track and field person, you kind of know a little bit about all those events, especially from competing and then coaching. Just being around it all that time, I could confidently kind of coach any event really, with the exception of maybe distance. It's a little out there for me, but
Now you're working full time and then you're coaching on the side. How do you balance that? Because I suspect that you're coaching track because it's a passion of yours, and so it's easy to become very invested in something like that. Spend a lot of hours doing that, traveling with the team, and so on. Uh, Yet at the same time, you've got these full time job responsibilities. How do you make sure you balance it all and stay sane to some extent?
I would say lots of early mornings and late nights. But yeah, I mean, I've never had a hard time balancing everything. Maybe it's just because I'm always on the move and I'm always going from one place to the other. Sometimes it does get hard though if you're traveling on the weekends to maybe the team splits up and you have two different meets, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. That could get a little hectic. You have those early mornings as well that could turn into late nights. Um, it really just keeping focused and knowing that you're making a difference both at my day job and coaching, is what kind of keeps me going. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, what are some of the challenges you face as a coach in high school?
Well, one challenge for me is sometimes I have to leave my day job early to get to practice a little early if I want to focus with some athletes on something. So I've had to, maybe get in the office a little early one day to make sure that I get everything done. Um, some of the other challenges, you get a really mixed bag of athletes at the high school level. So at Sachem North, we have over 100 girls on the team at some
Wow.
times. So you get a lot of mixed personalities. You get some very talented athletes. You get some that are kind of just in there for the ride, and they just, oh, well, we're just going to run for a season. It'll be fun. Um, so being able to balance out the expectations and kind of treat everyone in the same way, in terms of what their athletic abilities are, I think that was a challenge that I was able to overcome very quickly, actually, and kind of just keep everyone laser focused and say, all right, let's get a little bit better today, let's get a little bit better tomorrow, and then kind of that's how we go for it.
All right, so let me push a little bit because you got all these athletes. Some are very talented and really driven. They want to, get a scholarship, and some are just kind of like, hey, as you said, I'm here for the experience. How do
Mhm.
you balance pushing those who really want it versus pushing those who are just there for fun, but you're not just there for fun. You want them to be successful. Do you have any advice or strategies for the ones who are just kind of not really that motivated?
I mean, it's tough to motivate everyone. Everyone gets motivated in different ways. One thing is to try to make it fun. I mean, running around in circles and killing your athletes isn't always exactly fun for them. But when they get out and they compete and they do well, it's kind of like an eye opener for them. Like, wow, I got better since my last race, and all
Mhm.
this hard work is starting to pay off. And it doesn't matter if you're the best athlete or the worst athlete on the team. If you're hitting a PR and running a personal best time, I'm going to be at the finish line hyping you up and saying, great job, blah, blah, blah. And then it's always nice to see the family come over after the race and say, oh my God, you did so good.
Mhm.
Those are some of the ways that will motivate any athlete, to be honest. So that's kind of how like to keep everyone motivated.
Now you talked about making it fun, and we know from research that keeping things fun keeps athletes engaged and motivated and coming back. Can you give some examples about how you keep something like track fun? Because I could see it being very repetitive
Mm,
and therefore quite boring for a lot of athletes. Just do this over and over and over, do these splits over and over and over.
yeah.
How do you incorporate fun into that?
Um, I guess trying to keep it light as far as, obviously we're coming in to practice, we're ready to work, we got to stay serious. Um, but anytime that there's breaks in between, we try to keep it light, have a little fun there. We may, instead of running a crazy workout on the track, we may go and do some hills, but I'll throw in like categories, like if you're wearing white shoes, you're going, and things like that, just to try to keep it interesting and fun. Um, we may do something where the whole team is involved versus just the small groups that we work with,
Mhm.
and that can be good too. Basically, anything to mix it up can be good. Maybe a change of scenery. We may take the distance squad. They may go out towards the beach or the lake and run around that area, something a little off campus. So that'll keep it interesting as well.
Hmm.
But yeah.
When you look at coaching track as a whole, you talked about all the different disciplines, and you're a big program. And can you talk a little bit about the size of your program? Because as you said, it's before we started, it's larger than I realized. How
Mhm.
then do you work together with other coaches? Because a lot of programs will be small. There's maybe a head coach and assistant coach. That's not the same in your group. So how do you work on logistics and making sure all your coaches are on the same page and working together?
Well, after the first week and we start to get all the names down, then it becomes a little easier. But each coach will take their group of athletes. So the jumps coach will kind of pick. We'll do testing first, so they'll do some standing broad jumps and things like that. We'll try to see who's has strengths and weaknesses here and there, and then we'll try to plug them into the events that we think are a best fit for them. Um, but some of the athletes will cross over. So some of my athletes may be great jumpers and vice versa. They may be good hurdlers. And so then we got to coordinate how we're going to split the time. Some athletes will come over, they'll do hurdles for the first hour, and then I'm sending them over to jumps to get some long jump work in. So it can get a little hairy trying to coordinate, especially when you have a good athlete that's good at multiple events, or even a multi-event athlete. They might be constantly running around. They might be doing 3 event groups in one day. And then on running days, you got kids that will be running the short sprints, but they're also kind of a mid-distance runner. So they might actually get kicked over to the coach who does the distance workouts. So it does take a little bit of coordination, especially when there's that many girls on the team. But I think after a little bit of time, we kind of got it down packed to a science now. We do pretty good with that.
Now, the assumption is that life is good, right? Everything goes according to plan. Everything works out the way it's supposed to. Athletes train the way they're supposed to, and as a consequence, you're successful year in, year out. I suspect that's not always the case, and I wondered if you could share kind of maybe some of the realities of coaching, some of the areas where maybe you are thinking, "Man, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?" Some days, can you give some examples of situations where it just doesn't always work out the way you wanted it to,
Um, yeah, no, I've
or
never
does
really,
it?
never really had bad experiences with coaching. I mean, I guess going out when it's cold outside is a little tough. I've learned to layer up, so it hasn't really been a problem. Sometimes you'll get a couple athletes who may not take it seriously, and they may bring some of the other athletes down in terms of
Mhm.
maybe they're goofing off a little bit too much and things like that, or maybe they'll go and disappear for a half hour and then just show back up.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, one of the obvious reasons is we'll have a talk with an athlete who may be bringing others down, and then if the problem persists, we may cut them. We don't normally cut people off the team though, but if we have to, we will, especially if it affects other athletes. So that, I guess that would be one problem that I've seen in the past. Another problem, not necessarily at Sachem, but I've seen this in the past where maybe their grades aren't where they should be, and if they're not doing good academically, they should be focusing on that, because at the end of the day, you want to get your degree and you want to be successful in that regard. So trying to balance out the schoolwork as well as the being an athlete, I think can also be a big challenge. And then also, if when you have a lot of people on a team, there's a lot of personalities. Some of those personalities may not coexist well together. So trying to bring them together, as a team, um, give an example, maybe the 4x400 meter relay. You got four different girls, and they're all working together for one goal, but you got to make sure that they're all on the same page, and that they're getting along well. I think that's a big part. So,
do you do any kind of activities, or how do you get them to work together towards that goal? What strategies do you have to make sure that they understand that this is a team event in this situation, but in 20 minutes I'm going to be racing by myself, or
hmm.
maybe against these teammates?
I mean, winning is always a motivator. So, we go in with high hopes of doing well. No one wants to finish in last place, obviously. So,
Mhm.
you have those time goals and things like that. But the other thing is, like say with the relay, they're practicing handoffs throughout the week, to make sure that their handoffs are nice and crisp during the meet. So, if they're doing some handoffs three times a week, they get some time to bond with each other and get to know each other at a little bit of a deeper level. And I'll say this, that relays, especially when you do well, it brings the whole relay together. So it's almost like this really big kind of like family bonding experience, sharing that memory that you guys, killed it together, you worked together. And then same thing in defeat. If maybe someone gets tripped up and then they get disqualified, or you drop the baton, then you got to work through that. And you got to say, all right, well, next time we're going to get better. We're going to practice this a little more and come back stronger. So.
Mhm. You've been coaching for several years now, and you mentioned you coached in college and now in high school. Looking back on your experiences, what advice would you have for others who are looking to get into coaching, or maybe improve as coaches, so that they kind of learn from your lessons, whether good lessons or bad?
I would say have a plan in mind. So if you have certain goals in coaching, like say you're at the high school level and you're trying to work your way up to the college level, I would clearly define your goals and kind of put maybe some kind of action plan together. It's always good to be prepared. Um, I would also be realistic with everything. So your job search may be limited at first, and you got to be ready to adapt. So again, like you may end up coaching at a couple smaller schools before you get that big break to the bigger school. So um, don't be afraid to take a smaller job, use it as a stepping stone. Same thing with internships or being even a volunteer coach. I know a lot of coaches will go that route before they get their big break. So um, I'd say keep track of all your accomplishments. It's kind of like a portfolio for yourself. And then professional development. I think everyone should try to make themselves better every day. So whether you're reading or watching videos or just getting out there and networking, you should always be constantly learning and trying to make yourself a little bit better.
Mhm.
Um, and
You-
go
Sorry.
ahead. No, you good.
Oh, when we were having this conversation via email before you did the interview, you mentioned the 6 Ps, and I wanted to throw that in there because I don't think anybody's mentioned it in any of the videos yet.
Yeah, so the 6 Ps, prior planning prevents piss poor performance. That's a motto I learned back in high school when I was on the wrestling team. The wrestling coach would say that all the time. And it kind of stuck with me because like even for today, I prepared for the interview. I made sure that I knew what I wanted to talk about and make sure that I was prepared because I could be sitting here like, oh, I don't know. So you could take the 6 Ps and put that with whatever you're doing and it'll be relevant.
Mhm. We did have one more question I wanted to get to from Steve Pruitt. He says, how do you, quote unquote, recruit athletes that only want to concentrate on one sport, but would really benefit from participating in track and field? So you've got that athlete, right? They're the basketball player who you're like, man, I wish I could get them into hurdles because they're fast and athletic and would be very successful in our program. How do you go and convince that person to try something maybe they've never tried before?
I'd say like anything in life, you got to give it some value. So any athlete that comes on the track and field team, you're going to get faster by the end of the season. You're going to get stronger. You're going to become more explosive. I mean, track and field, we train in a certain way that, at least I train a certain way that's going to help athletes become more explosive. That's kind of my thing. So whether you're a basketball player or a soccer player, that's going to help you out on the turf or on the court. And so that if you build enough value and say, listen, you're going to benefit from competing in track and field in your other sports, the athletes will be more likely to, give it a second thought.
Mm. Have you ever had, a side question, ever had athletes who you've pulled into track and field who ended up becoming, focusing on track and field as opposed to the sport they were playing?
Yeah, I had a really good lacrosse player who we pulled in for winter track, and obviously she couldn't do spring track because that was when lacrosse was. But in winter track, I mean, she was a really, really good hurdler. She was just an all around good athlete, and she kind of took it as something that was fun, and it would help her with her lacrosse in the spring. But at the same time, when she started getting to a really good level, a very competitive level, we kind of took it a little more serious, and we had a lot of fun doing it, and it definitely did help her with her lacrosse career. She's over at the D1 level now, so.
Well, I want to be cognizant of your time, and I know that there may be people watching in future, whether it be on YouTube or listening to the podcast, who have questions for you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
You can reach me on social media. Instagram, KennyR33. Twitter is KennyR_33. You can reach me by email, KennyJR347@gmail. Or you can find me on Facebook, Kenny Ruddick. Easy enough.
Kenny's everywhere on social media, apparently. So if you have a question for Kenny and you weren't able to get it into the show, or you're watching and it's not live, be sure to get him a question. Kenny, I want to say thank you for spending the time and just sharing a little bit about your knowledge in track and field and your experiences as a college and high school coach. Just want to ask, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you feel like you need to share with everybody?
No, not really. Always put the team first if you're looking to be a coach. Team first, athlete second, and put yourself last. That would be my best advice.
Thank you so much for joining me. And of course, just a reminder that we have these shows every week. If you haven't yet subscribed to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, be sure to do so you get notification of when we do go live. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and Kenny Ruddick, thank you so much for watching.
Thanks, Tim.